Welcome, Ariel Garten.
She is a pioneer in the field of mental, emotional health and performance.
And your company, Muse, developed a brain-sensing headband designed to enhance meditation.
Give it up for my friend, Ariel Garten.
It is wonderful to be here at Genius Network and see all of your shining faces.
We are going to focus this episode on flow.
First of all, I love it.
Yes.
We can intentionally choose to dip back into focused, flowy, beautiful alpha states for your brain to all sync into this one beautiful brain state, for the orchestra to all come together singing at the same time.
Welcome to The Doctor and the Nurse, where I interview a high-performance guest, and then Dr. Daniel Amen and I sit down after to discuss what's going on in the brain for our guest in their high-performance capacity. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Have you ever felt like your mind is basically running a marathon? Non-stop thoughts during the day, no off switch at night. I do, and you probably do as well. Trust me, a lot of people do. Raise your hand. Yeah, I know. Don't lie. Now, check this out. Imagine this, a guide that not only helps you focus, but actually trains your brain to find calm when you need it the most. Calm in the chaos. Meet Muse. M-U-S-E. Muse isn't just another gadget, it's a game changer. This brain-sensing headband gives you real-time feedback during meditation, turning your brain activity into soothing sounds of nature. And you'll know exactly when you're in the zone and your mind starts to drift. I kind of call this, a trackable like an Oura Ring or a Whoop, but for your brain. Whether you're a meditation newbie or a seasoned pro, Muse keeps you locked in. High-performance athletes, top executives, and anyone looking to unlock their potential are already using Muse. Sent it out to a lot of my athletes and CEOs. But here's the question: why? Because it focuses and calms you, and it's just a foundation to being able to get into flow state. I'm big on it, recharging my mind. We talk about recharging our body, but we hardly ever talk about recharging our mind. So time to level up this year, 2025. Transform your day-to-day. Go to choosemuse.com/nurse. That's CHOOSEMUSE.com/nurse. Grab your 20% off for my listeners only with that exclusive link. And don't just think about it. Start training your brain to today. Your calm, your focus, your next level mindset and flow state, just a click away.
Ariel Garten, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for hopping on today, a esteemed neuroscientist, and we are going to focus this episode on flow, the elusive flow state, this, feeling of in the zone, the effortless effort. Can you just talk about it? Like, what is flow state, and why do you think no one has been able to figure out how you can actually get into it more consistently and stay in it longer?
Awesome. So flow is this gorgeous state that many of us have touched on and maybe not even realized. It's the state in which you are perfectly at peace and at the right level of challenge with what you're working on. So it's a state where you feel fully engaged in your activity. Time seems to stand still. You're fully satisfied. All of your basic needs kind of disappear for that moment. And it is a state that feels really good and people try over and over to achieve. Why don't a lot of people achieve this state? Well, several reasons why. One, most of us go through our lives being distracted and pulled from one thing to the next, so we're not even given the opportunity to hit this state. And two, because it is a state that takes a fair amount of precondition and time to get into. So if you want to achieve optimal flow, you probably want to spend some time doing two kinds of activities beforehand. So one is a creative type activity where you're gathering ideas from place to place and like loading the content in your mind. And then the second is a focusing type activity. And you want to create the space and the time for you to be able to do it with no distractions around you. And then once you're there, you want to be doing and choosing an activity that is perfectly matched to your task skill. So, you want it to be just a little challenging, but not too challenging. And if you can meet all of those criteria, you have a good chance of entering flow.
I love that. The creative with the focus. So it's an interesting thing, right? Where you're talking about flow, which is just, it kind of just happens. You just are, and focus, which you are, so dialed in on one certain thing, focusing on that creative that you put into your brain. Have you seen, in your experience as a neuroscientist, have you seen certain levels of the brain, like the theta, beta, gamma, the different waves? Is there a hertz level where it's the most optimal for flow?
Yeah, so let's do like a Brainwave 101 primer. Sorry, you might see a little foot here. I have a baby who's nursing in my lap, unrelated to David Nurse, my baby. Yeah, she's breastfeeding as we talk. So, she's probably in some form of flow right now. she's in heaven, although the task, to be her task has very little challenge at the moment.
Yeah, but they can get into flow. You see a kid just playing video games, or just locked in on their own world that they're in. Kids can I feel like they have some kind of tool that adults lose, and maybe it is the distraction. Sorry, go back to the primer on the 101 for brain training, brain waves.
And we can actually tie that into kids in a second. So you made a really good point I want to come back to. So Brainwaves 101, you have beta waves that typically arise when you are thinking and cogitating a lot. You have high beta when you tend to have a lot of thoughts and anxiety. So high beta tends to be a marker for, an anxious, over-ruminative brain. Then you drop down into alpha, that's 8 to 12 hertz. And in alpha, you're in a state that is typically a very focused and calm state. So it brings together both the notions of focus and calm, and has a good dose of creative potential in it. As you're about to fall asleep, your brain is in alpha. When you're doing a meditation session and you're like dialed in, your brain is also in alpha. So it doesn't necessarily refer to the sleepiness of the state. It's the sort of calm focus of that state.
Okay, so, kids have high alpha and they're able to be in this flow state. It seems like so much regularly and deeper than adults. Now, is it that adults lose the alpha waves, or what is it that us as adults now aren't able to tap in and utilize the alpha waves like kids are?
So that's interesting. Now, I would say that the child brain and the adult brain are different, and they're different for good reason. So kids are able to lose themselves in activities for hours on end, and it's awesome and beautiful. And that's why we think about it as this free, amazing time called childhood. As adults, our brains mature. I could say our brains age, but that sounds bad. But really, our brains mature. From infancy, we're going through pruning, we're going through intense periods of neuroplasticity, we're going through hormonal changes, we're going through things that shape our brain into who we are. And who we are as adults is a brain that responds like an adult, a brain that's able to think and process and attend and, be responsible for things, not always in a dream state. Or not always, in this solely focused state. We're able to manage multiple children who might be pulling at our knees, along with business projects and getting gas for the car that you don't forget, and. On the other hand, as wonderful as these states are as an adult, we can intentionally choose to dip back into these focused, flowy, beautiful alpha states by doing things like meditation. And it turns out that when you do that, it actually is really healthy for your brain to all sync into this one beautiful brain state, for the orchestra to all come together singing at the same time, and allowing yourself to just dive deeply into one beautifully, engaged activity.
Yeah, I like that. So in meditation, now there's been tons of studies on meditation, and one that I saw that stood out was a Harvard study that said you increase gray matter in your brain through meditating. And I think it said that the brain becomes even 7.5 years younger in this study. Are you familiar with this study on meditation?
Totally. So there's two different studies you're referencing. The first one is, yes, I know there's literature. So the first one is a study by Dr. Sarah Lazar, and there they had non-meditators do an 8-week course of meditation. They put them inside an MRI, and they were able to determine that after just 8 weeks of a basic MBSR program, they were able to increase the density of their gray matter. So the density of your gray matter is the number of connections that you have in the brain. And so it really suggests that you're better able to process information after that meditation session. So that's awesome. The other study with 7.5 years younger brain, that comes from the work of Dr. Eileen Luders. And in that study, it was also fMRI based. They were looking at images of brains of meditators and non-meditators. And the meditators they were looking at were long-term meditators who had meditated for 5 years or more. And when they looked at that data, they looked at their brains, they were able to see that their brains looked on average 7.5 years younger than the brains of non-meditators the same chronological age.
So obviously the meditation is very important for a lot of different reasons, like you were speaking to. And even, I mean, if you want to say, hey, your brain gets younger, but I think even just so in the present moment too, of being that at peace feeling when we're constantly on, we're constantly stressed. Now, something that I've been doing with athletes for a long time is what I call metavisualization. And I think I might have made that word up. I want to think that I did. It sounds cool.
I think it's yours.
I'm going to take it. So putting in visualization into the meditation aspect of it. Now, there's a lot of studies on visualization, and the one that really got me going was this brain scan of participants in a 12-week study. There's positive imagery study. So they're looking at positive images. They're thinking of positive images. It's called self-efficacy, where they're acting as if they are the person that they want to be today in the present moment. And it showed improvements in cognitive function, emotional states, nonverbal reasoning. The list goes on and on and on. So what do you think, as a much smarter than myself neuroscientist who studies the brain and knows every area of the brain, is this something that we can implement to take meditation to a higher level? Do you think metavisualization, and do you think this is a tactic tool that, because I'm on this mission to help people get into flow state more regularly and stay in it longer. So I guess what I'm asking is, what are your thoughts on metavisualization and, putting the two together?
Awesome. First of all, I love it. I think it's a very powerful tool. When we look at the purpose of meditation, it has many, many, many purposes, but one is to stabilize the mind, to stabilize your attention. So in our highly distracted world, we're used to things flashing before our eyes. Our thought comes in, we jump to the next piece. So for the kind of work, just visualization work that you're describing, you actually need the knowledge and structure of a meditation practice to train the attention. So, if you were to ask me to, or anybody listening to, sit down and visualize an apple floating in the air, it's red, and then you want them to hold that visualization for a period of time. For most people, that image would go very quickly because there's not the mental discipline to maintain engagement with it. Other thoughts, rightly so, come in because your brain's like, there's all this other stuff that's important I need to tell you right now. So the meditation aspect is key, the ability to actually choose the contents of your mind and not get distracted with the other stuff coming in. And then the visualization piece is incredibly important. A good friend of mine, Dr. Jim Doty, actually just wrote a book called Magic of the Mind, and it's a neuroscientist's guide to manifestation. And his approach is, it has nothing to do with the universe and the world outside you. Instead, manifestation is this incredible tool that we have to harness inside of ourselves when we put our intention towards an action, when we visualize it, when we consume ourselves with this thought and way of being. We actually start to recruit all these subconscious, subcortical networks to help us fulfill our goal. So if you are visualizing yourself as a basketball star, making the right goals. There's a very cool study that had students visualize themselves throwing a basket while another group of students actually physically practiced it. And the students who simply visualized it, they didn't actually do it physically, but they visualized it, significantly improved in their practice. Not only does it kind of in the moment affect your ability to build those skills and the neural networks associated with it, it can flood you with dopamine and give you a positive sensation towards this, and it orients our intention. That goal-oriented part of ourselves, that dopamine-driven system, now starts to orient towards that goal. And so you're more likely to do the activities in your daily life that are aligned with your goal. So that visualization actually kind of brings your entire conscious and subconscious self towards the manifestation in a very actual way of that thing that you're trying to achieve.
So interesting. So do you think it's the brain actually thinking that is reality? Like in the basketball shooting, the ones who just thought about it and the ones who actually shot it, are they the ones that are thinking about it? Are they actually training the brain waves to think and believe in the same way that someone who would have made the shot is? Is that what's going on? Do you know what I'm saying? Am I asking that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on, and there are pieces of it that are missing. I mean, people who are sitting there imagining doing this, their consciousness doesn't believe that they're actually doing it. But what they're doing is they are rehearsing it, and mental rehearsal is a form of rehearsal. It may, in the basketball example, it may not be quite as good because you're not getting the feedback of exactly how you have to turn your wrist to be aligned to the net to perfectly get the ball in. You're not getting the feedback of, this alignment made it go off to the side slightly, so I better adjust. So there are pieces of reality that are missing, but at the same time, there are parts of yourself that are really believing you as the basketball player, that this is real. They're really believing that you're capable of this. And they might not believe it at first, and it takes a lot of visualization for you to, become the thing that you are imagining yourself to be, or your body mind to accept that, yes, you can be this thing.
Totally. Okay. So this is just a thought I had in hearing you say this. And I think you'll have a good answer to this because I haven't really ever been able to figure it out. And I really want to figure this out. So, pressure packed situations. So let's say for athletes, it's different when you're practicing versus actually playing. When someone's preparing a talk versus actually giving the talk, just, pressure versus non-pressure practice. Is there a way to simulate, because this all has to be happening in your brain, right? The feeling of pressure. Is there a way that you've found to simulate pressure at the highest, like closest to the actual activity through practice?
That is a very cool question. And as you were asking it, I was trying things on, and I feel a pit of slight anxiety in my stomach.
You're feeling the pressure to answer the question on pressure.
I haven't felt any anxiety at all until this moment. But it's fascinating that as you set up this context for pressure, my body started to move into that state. So I think in there lies one answer, and this isn't something I've thought about before, but in there lies one answer, which is you can even start to imagine, the crowds, imagine the other players, imagine how good they are, bring back those pieces that cause anxiety, because from your amygdala's perspective, so the amygdala is the part of the brain that's associated with fear and creates the fear emotions and then the cortisol response in your body. From the amygdala's perspective, imagined fear or imagined threat is the same as real threat. So imagined visualized threat or imagined just thought form threat is the same as if there is actually something there. So you certainly can get someone to visualize those elements, but more importantly, I would think what you'd want to get somebody to do is to be able to kind of habituate to that kind of stressful situation and be able to downregulate. So, create it from the outside and then have the person practice the state shift and the release of those kinds of stressful situations instead of playing them in their own minds and, creating the neural pathways for those sorts of fear thoughts to come more readily.
That's a good point. Yeah, because if you start, it's a dangerous game, huh? If you start playing those in your mind, then your mind like starts to become that, and that takes over. So you almost got to play it out in the outer to bring it to the inner. This is just it's fascinating stuff hearing you say that too, and I love the terminology you use with down regulate. I want to get back to that at a point later on of upregulating and down regulating, kind of like upshifting and downshifting the car. And because I think it's a really like hot topic that people talk about is let's increase our dopamine, let's increase our serotonin, and those are well known. I think it's very lesser known to almost anybody, let alone the public, of you can actually uptrain and downtrain your brain waves, the ones we were talking about earlier, to get to a certain level where you want to be at. I think that's like the next frontier of high performance training. So we'll circle back to that, but I want to talk about something that I know you're very passionate about and what you have created, an incredible product in Muse of a brain training to help us get into the better state of meditation, like we talked about, but also it's kind of like a digital sleep pill. And sleep is undefeated. I don't care what anybody says. It's if they try to say like there's all these like sleep is undefeated. Doesn't matter if you got like did everything you could biohacking wise and you got a bad night's sleep, you ain't gonna feel good. So let's talk about sleep and the recharge as it relates to how important it is to flow in a meditative state and what you have been studying and finding at Muse and like how we can shut this racing brain off that so many high performers and just so many people who are just people have.
There are so many thoughts packed into there. Where do you want to begin? What's the first? Should we actually just start with a description of what is Muse? Because people are like, what are you talking about?
Let's do it. I think that's the best. And then let's break down on how it helps the brain sleep and, the wind down process of recharging for the next day.
So I have been very, very lucky to have been able to work on creating something that has actually helped hundreds of thousands of people meditate and sleep better. Me and my team of neuroscientists and colleagues, we created this device. It's the Muse. So it's a clinical grade EEG. It reads your brain activity, and it has sensors at the forehead and behind the ears. It slips on just like this.
You're listening to this. It's just slipping right across her forehead. You can look at this online with Choose Muse, the website.
Yep.
Choose Muse.
You can check it out at Choose Muse.
Yeah, very lightweight. Yep. Go ahead.
So just like a Fitbit might track your steps or your heart rate, this tracks your brain activity as well as your movement and your heart rate as well. So there are many different uses for this. One of the most popular ones is as a meditation tool and as a general overall brain health system. So as a meditation tool, everybody knows that meditation is good for you, but it's really hard to do. It's hard to get into that state and stay in that state. So what Muse does is it actually gives you real-time feedback on your brain during meditation. So while you're meditating, instead of just sitting there being like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? Am I optimizing this experience? Muse is actually tracking your meditation and giving you guiding sounds to let you know when your brain is wandering, when you're in the meditation state, to reinforce you to stay there. And then after the fact, you get data, charts, graph scores that show you what your brain, your heart, and your body were doing during the course of your meditation to really help you optimize it and dial it right in. And this is super popular. There's a ton of studies that have been written on it, and it's an incredibly effective meditation tool.
I mean, I just love it. I'm just thinking of the analogy that you made of like the Fitbit for your brain. Because we can track, everybody tracks their steps, or a Whoop, but I've never seen this done for the brain. That's really cool to have that type of, feedback and data. Keep going.
So then for sleep, we heard a lot of people were using Muse just before bed to help them fall asleep. It was helping them quiet their mind, turn off the endless process that we have in our brains. It seems to not stop and keep us awake. And so we actually created a bespoke device. This is the Muse S. So it is a soft fabric band, again, with EEG sensors and a PPG sensor. And it's able to do all of the same things as the Muse 2, so all the meditation tools and brain health tools. And it also helps you sleep. So Muse S can actually track your brain as effectively as a sleep lab. We have dozens and dozens of researchers that use Muse actually as an at-home sleep lab, which is amazing.
That is amazing.
And then we've also built beautiful experiences that help you fall asleep. So guided meditations and adaptive audio that actually track your brain activity from in the transition from wakefulness to sleep, and then are designed to guide your brain into sleep. And then once you're asleep, the audio shuts off. And then if you wear the Muse throughout the night, if you wake up in the middle of the night, it brings back in the same audio that helped you fall asleep the first place and brings you back down into sleep. So it's this beautiful, we call it the digital sleeping pill. It's this adaptive neurobiofeedback system that helps you fall asleep. And if you wake up in the night, helps you fall back asleep. And it is super effective.
Well, that's what I think that's a huge issue for people sleeping is the disturbances and just like all the different things that happen to wake you up and sleep. Obviously, if you have kids, you got to deal with those disturbances. But there was I think it was a study in New York City, and it's like 25% of people suffer from poor sleep because of the noise induced on the outside and everything. And I mean, white noise is the way that you can do it. But this sounds like it's getting you into that deep sleep stage. And if you come out of it, which is probably the biggest issue for people, right? Is it the deep sleep regenerative sleep is the deep sleep and getting back into that stage when you get woken up. I feel like a lot of people struggle from that.
So if we want to nerd out on sleep for a minute.
Come on.
So why not?
Love it.
Let's nerd out on all things. So your brain goes from wakefulness into N1, a stage that you're in very briefly, into N2, stage 2 sleep, where you have things like sleep spindles and K complexes, into stage 3, which is deep sleep. In a really healthy sleep, you have most of your deep sleep at the beginning of the night. So you typically have like 2 to 3 sessions of deep sleep at the beginning 4 hours of the night, and they typically should take up about 2 hours of your night in deep sleep. The second phase of your sleep, the next 4 hours, is mainly comprised of, again, awake stage 1, stage 2, and REM sleep. And it's actually in the REM sleep that people are most disturbed. So if you have been woken up during deep sleep, you're going to be harder to wake up then because you are in deep sleep. But if you've been woken up, you can maybe kind of groggily get back to sleep. But when you're woken up in the second phase in your REM, it becomes very difficult sometimes to fall back asleep. And your REM sleep is actually just as important as your deep sleep. Deep sleep does amazing things for the brain, including, it's been demonstrated, actually can remove toxins like amyloid beta from the brain by the glymph action that happens during deep sleep. It's highly, highly restorative to your brain and body. REM sleep is actually also incredibly important because it's involved in emotional and memory processing and the ability to encode our memories more effectively, in some pruning of memory because you don't want to remember everything. And so you have to have kind of an intact architecture of sleep throughout your whole night, going from your early phases of deep sleep to your later phases of REM sleep, hopefully in a nice 7-ish, 8-ish, 6.5-ish hour package to benefit most from it. So any stage of sleep you don't really want to lose out on. You want to be able to make it through the whole night. And that's one of the things we hope to help you do.
I mean, that alone sounds like the biggest game changer you could have, especially when you're talking about the quality of the sleep is so important. I think people get stuck on the hours. And I mean, I know, when I feel most rested, of course, I'm looking at like sleep scores on a ring or whatever it might be. You see the deep sleep and the REM sleep are at high. Wow, really interesting. Love nerd out on sleep with you.
So we actually have a tool called Deep Sleep Points. So we're able to measure not just how long you've spent in deep sleep, but actually the depth of your deep sleep.
Oh, stop. Talk to me on this. You can get deeper on the deep sleep. There's depth levels of this deep sleep?
Totally. So deep sleep is characterized by delta waves. As you age, when you look at somebody's delta wave activity during sleep, they have very attenuated delta waves. The amplitude, the amount of the height of the delta, the power of that delta is much lower. And so deep sleep, good deep sleep is actually correlated not just with having spent time in delta state, but actually the amount of delta that you have during that time, the amplitude of your delta. So when we talk about the quality of sleep, that's one of the characteristics to look at. And one of the characteristics we can actually measure with Muse, which you can't measure with anything else. Like you can't see it from your finger.
That's amazing. Okay, delta for deep sleep. We had alpha we were talking about earlier. I had alluded to the training of the brain waves, the upregulating and downregulating of brain waves. Is this done through neurofeedback, or how is this done to the best capacity? Because we want to, everything we're talking about is getting into your flow state. And that doesn't necessarily mean just your highest performance when you're out there on the court or on stage, but it is just living ultimately your best life where you're just in rhythm and you feel good about things. That is a higher level of flow state. So how do you upregulate and downregulate your brain waves? And we can talk about the neurofeedback way to do it. We could talk about how someone could do it who's just, doesn't have access to neurofeedback. Maybe we tackle them both.
Awesome. So neurofeedback is one of the most efficient ways to do it because you're specifically targeting different brain states and rewarding the brain to get there. So in neurofeedback, what you're doing is you have a EEG device that's monitoring your brainwave activity. When you get into the right brainwave state, it gives you a rewarding audio reward, and that tells your brain, yep, you're there, you did it. It's very much like having a coach when you play basketball, and you see if it went into the net, and then you can adjust a little bit and see if it goes into the net, and your coach can help you do that. It's the best way to learn something. So with Muse, we provide various forms of neurofeedback. One of them is the focused attention meditation training, where we are reinforcing your brain for being in that alpha state. And there have been a ton of studies done using Muse, and one of them from the Catholic University of Milan, what they saw was that people who did Muse meditation as opposed to just standard meditation practice had improvements in their cognitive function, improvements in their, obviously, stress, but they also had physiological improvements. So improvements in heart rate and changes in their brainwave activity that indicated that they were in alpha more, not just during the task, but actually throughout the day. So it's really been demonstrated that neurofeedback at a point in time generalizes and carries with you throughout the day to maintain this alpha state.
That's fascinating. So with neurofeedback, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously you guys are doing that at Muse. Is there a way, let's say somebody's like, yeah, I'm super interested. I want to just get into this first. I want to uptrain. I want to downtrain my brain, but I'm not able to, have Muse on at this time. I'm on the go. Maybe is there ways to uptrain and downtrain the brain in just, all right, I'm not necessarily meditating. All right. I'm just what ways would somebody do it with just themselves?
Cool. So one of them is alternate nostril. So there are various forms of meditation that you can use to do that. One of them is alternate nostril breathing. You can do right nostril breathing or left nostril breathing. One of them upregulates your energy and your focus, and one of them brings you into calm.
Okay, which one? Is it different right or left? Is that the difference of which brings you up?
You're stressing me. I didn't specifically say it because I didn't want to say it wrong.
That's okay. Hey, I'll put you on the spot. We can research that. That's totally fine.
I think left is going to downregulate and right is going to upregulate.
You're stressing me. That's funny.
That's my hypothesis.
Stress.
So there's alternate nostril breathing and various forms of breath work. Also exercise. So exercise gets you, for many reasons, into the zone. One of them being that you are now focusing on your body and taking yourself out of the wandering discursive mind of beta state. Another one being that you're upregulating so many of the positive chemicals and hormones in your body. And those have a very calming and focusing effect. We all know, you can feel really in the zone after doing the right kind of exercise for you. And it can certainly vary from person to person. One person running will make them totally miserable and screwed. The other person, wow, they're in flow and it's amazing.
So tell me about this, because I think this is going right in step. And as we're wrapping up here, introducing this study and the flow code is what I'm calling it, to be able to tap into flow state more regularly and stay in it longer. So you talked about breathing, different ways of breathing, and diaphragmatic breathing for someone who's fast and needs to downshift, because that would downshift and deregulate the brain waves. Box breathing, a more higher paced if you are a slower brain and need to upregulate. Is this all correlating so far? You're like, no, that's way off? Because I'm also looking for input from you too, since you're
Yeah. So I was listening to your list.
Okay.
Diaphragmatic breathing is going to downregulate. Can we do a totally cool little segue for a half second?
Yeah, come on.
Okay, so heart rate variability. Most people don't actually know how we come up with this metric and what it means. So when you breathe in, your heart rate increases. When you breathe out, your heart rate decreases. It's called your sinusoidal arrhythmia. When you breathe in, at the top of your in-breath, your heart is pumping really, really fast. As you breathe out, your heart rate is decreasing. And the longer you exhale, that's why when we do diaphragmatic breathing, deep breathing, slow exhales, you end up in a beautiful slowing heart rate. And the longer you stay there, theoretically, the slower your heart rate is going to be. So your HRV is the difference between your high heartbeat on your in-breath and your low heartbeat on the bottom of your out-breath. And so that's why people who do a lot of breathwork exercises have cardiovascular systems that are really healthy, and that is reflected in a very high HRV. The same with runners, people who exercise a lot and are used to improving their cardiopulmonary function. And when you're super stressed and you have shallow breaths and your vagus nerve, which is part of the thing that's responsible for that beautiful slowing heart rate, your vagus nerve is not coming on as quickly and responding as properly, you get very narrow, squished HRV. All of these things you can actually see in Muse. You can see what your heart is doing as it goes up and down with every breath and different activities. But that was a total tangent just related to different kinds of breathing and why it might upregulate or downregulate or stimulate you in different ways.
Well, I think that was a perfect segue on that, because that was something I've always wondered about, and you just nailed it there. But it's, like you were talking about, the different types of breathing to up or down regulate, the different types of exercise and movement to call cross-crawl disorganization, different types of body movements. And just kind of like we've been talking about, these different ways of, meditation, metavisualization, as we spoke about earlier. I think there's in flow of, just being at your best, best rhythm. There's a neural sculpting type of way of connecting with a higher form of gratitude that I think plays a really important role in this, in a long-term flow aspect. But overall, what's so cool is this cutting edge and next frontier of training the brain and flow state is you have a trackable device that you can have real-time feedback and data from that's coming. So it's one thing of like if a basketball player is just out there, shooting hoops, but it's a whole nother thing if they're able to track how great their shot is, how many shots they make. It's the only way we can continue and improve is with this real-time feedback. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, and you're at the cutting edge of it. So, Ariel, amazing. You blew my mind. I know that there's going to be just a lot of jaws dropping in this interview, listening to you and your expertise as a neuroscientist. So would you say, as we conclude, kind of coming back full circle, do you think it's possible that we will be able to figure out how to get into flow state more regularly and stay in it longer? You think that's a possible thing that is going to be able to be done?
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%. And some of it is habit-based. So, if you're constantly being distracted and you don't have the time in your calendar for it, it can't happen. So, some of it's really practical. Some of it is mindset-based, state-based, preparation-based. So there's lots of different tools and techniques that you can use to carve out the time in your life, create the precondition, and motivate yourself to bring your mind and body into flow.
Love it. Can you tell the audience ways we can, find more stuff that you've done, or, learn more about Muse, all that good stuff?
Totally. So you can go to choosemuse.com, CHOOSEMUSE.com. We actually even have an article on Brainwaves and Flow that you can find there in our blog. And on all the socials, you can find us at Choose Muse.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ariel. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for dropping this wisdom on us.
Ariel Garten's a neuroscientist, and Ariel's talking about metavisualization, meditation and visualization together as one. So what happens in the brain? What state does it tap into when someone is meditating and visualizing? And do you think that's a tactic that you can utilize, putting those two together to reach a deeper state of flow?
I love both of them. And I think when you do visualization, you are meditating. So meditation is just focus. It's bringing your attention to a single point of focus. And I have my players develop highlight reels. I want them watching highlight reels of when they did their best. Because too often, if you're a high-level person, but your mind is undisciplined, you focus on what you did wrong. And I often say good coaches, like good parents, notice what you do right, and they teach you when you can do better. Bad coaches, like bad parents, notice what you do wrong, and they never let you forget it. And so I think when I worked with Alicia Newman, she's a Canadian pole vaulter who made no height in Tokyo and won the bronze medal in Paris. She saw herself succeeding over and over and over. And in her post-Olympic interview, she said, I didn't lose at all the last 2 years. I won or I learned. I won.
I love
or
that.
I learned.
Yeah.
And if you watched her at the Olympics, she was so beautiful and so happy because she was able to stay in the present moment. And that's so important to get to that flow state. It's to be in the moment, not in the past with regret or the future with fear. And when I first met her, she told me, she said, if I don't medal in Paris, I'll be a failure. And my future children won't love me. And I'm like, whoa, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do.
Hey, good news is
and we did it.
She medaled, yeah. I like having the joy in, I think that a lot of that comes with when you're not afraid of there's a failure option or something's a loss. When you look at it as learning, like you're talking about.
You win or you learn.
Yeah,
every day with my patients.
Situation.
We win or we learn.
So Ariel and I were also talking about up training and down training brainwaves to reach the most ideal levels of alpha, beta, gamma, delta, theta waves to tap into flow state more regularly and stay in longer. So in all the brains you've studied, is there something that stands out to you that says, yeah, this level of hertz or this level of alpha, whatever the level is, would be more readily closer to that flow state? Is there like guess what I'm saying is like a essential state in the brain with the waves, all the different waves?
Well, so good balance would be important. And then train up frontal lobe alpha so that you can be relaxed and focused.
Okay, that's the relaxed and
so
focused.
It's relaxed and focused. So if you're going to make a shot at the end of a basketball game, you have to believe you can make it. You have to see it. And then you just have to get your mind out of the way and make it.
Any other areas? So that's relaxed and focused. Any other areas of the brain that you like, okay, you really need to make sure this one's relaxed.
Well, you
or
want them to be
locked in.
balanced.
Balanced, yeah.
Yeah, you want your brain to be balanced with all the different brainwave patterns, right? If you have too much beta, you're going to be anxious. If you have too much theta, you're going to be like Lamar Odom, which we got into a fuss during the NBA Finals when I found out I was season ticket holder for the Lakers for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I found out he was eating $80 of candy a week. And I'm like, no, because he was like a space cadet. Like Kobe would throw him the ball and he wasn't even looking. I'm like, you're paying this man $14 million a year. Why do you not have a nutritionist working with him?
Seriously.
Because he's so good.
Yo,
and he
so
was
good.
so spacey.
$80 worth of candy's a
Too
lot.
much theta is too much
Okay.
theta.
Wow. I'm just like, how do you even do that? Like, candy bars aren't even that expensive. It's crazy. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more where it came from. You can go find another episode just like it right here. Come on. You can click it. You know you want to.